angle relationships. The diagram shows parallel lines A and B cut by transversals C and D. If the measure of angle 1 right here is 115 degrees, and the measure of angle 8 right here is 105 degrees, what is the measure of each of the following angles? So the first thing I want to do is circle these two lines to show that they are separate. They're going to have different types of angles within the circles and along the lines themselves. Then I want to go through and find out which angles are all congruent to the ones that are given to us. I know 3 is congruent to 1, meaning it's 115 degrees because they're vertical angles. 1 and 13 are congruent. They are corresponding angles. 1 and 15 are congruent because those are alternate exterior angles. They're outside of the parallel lines. Then going along the transversal D, angle 6 and angle 8 are congruent, meaning that's 105 degrees as well, because that's a vertical angle. 8 and 10 are considered alternate interior angles because they're inside of the parallel lines. And 8 and 12 are also congruent because 8 and 12 are corresponding angles. Those are some vocabulary words for you. Now we're trying to find angle 5. Angle 5 is right here. If I know this line right here, all the way over is 180 degrees. All you have to do is say, what is 180 minus the piece that's given, which is 105, and that will give you the answer of 75 degrees. Moving on to angle 11, which is right here. There's several ways to find angle 11. One way to find it is to say angle 5 and angle 11 are congruent to each other because they are alternate exterior angles. So because they're congruent, angle 11 is also going to be 75 degrees. And then we're going to move on to angle 16. Angle 16 is not associated with these angles at all. And angle 16 is not congruent to 115 or any of these other angles, 1, 3, 13, or 15. So one way to find that angle is to consider this line. The entire line is 180 degrees from here all the way over. So if I know this piece, I'm going to say 180 minus 115, and that will give me my answer of 65 degrees. Moving on to the next question. Number 2 is all about vocabulary words. Angle 1 and angle 4. They wanted you to match these angles with the description given. Angle 1 and 4 are corresponding angles. They are congruent to each other. They're considered congruent pairs. Angle 2 and 3, right here, 2 and 3. Those two angles are not congruent to each other. They actually add up to equal 180 degrees, which means they're supplementary. Another word for them is same side interior angles. I'm going to write supplementary, just so I know that those two angles are going to add to give me 180 degrees. Next, 3 and 4. 3 and 4 are right here. They're opposites of one another. They are congruent, and they are vertical angles. And the last one, angle 4 and angle 6. They are right here. Now, they are inside of these two parallel lines. That's why they're interior angles, and they're on alternate sides of this transversal line, so that's why they are alternate interior angles. And they are also congruent to one another. All right, number 3. Number 3 and 4 are similar. They're together. They're two problems that are associated with one another. I told you in class to scratch out answer choice D. We don't need to know linear pair as a vocabulary word, so we're not going to worry about that answer choice. That's not a true statement anyway. It says parallel lines M and N are cut by transversal T. Which statements are true? Choose all that apply, meaning we're going to choose more than one. This symbol here just means congruent. Okay? Angle 1 and 5. 1 and 5. They are congruent. The reason why they're congruent is because those are corresponding angles. Angle 2 and 4. These two angles are also congruent. They are vertical angles. Angle 2 and 7. 2 is here, 7 is here. It looks like they may be corresponding angles, but they are not. Angle 2 and angle 7 are not associated with one another at all, and they are definitely not congruent. They're actually supplementary angles. The last answer choice, angle 4 and 5, are supplementary, so we have 4 and 5 right here. That is a true statement because they are same side interior angles. And because they're same side interior, one of the angles is going to be a small angle and one of the angles is going to be a big angle, meaning they're going to add up to be 180 degrees. And when you add up to be 180 degrees, we consider that supplementary. Now, number 4 says, if the measure of angle 1 in the diagram is 38 degrees, so angle 1 right here is 38 degrees. What is the measure of the other angles? All of the other angles. So I'm going to go through kind of like I did with number 1, and I'm going to say 3 is congruent to angle 1, which is 38 degrees, because they're vertical angles. 1 and angle 5 are congruent, because those are corresponding angles. 1 and angle 7 are congruent, because they are alternate exterior angles. The reason why they're exterior is because they are on the outside of the parallel line. See 1 and 7? They're outside of the parallel lines. They're alternate exterior angles. So I'm going to go through and list. Angle 3 is 38 degrees. 5 is 38 degrees. 7 is 38 degrees as well. Now, if we know that, then we can figure out the rest of the angle measurements. The rest of the angle measurements are going to be larger angles than 38 degrees. And you can pick any angle in particular and find the value. Let's start with 8. If I know this whole line, because we know a line is 180 degrees, if I know the whole line is 180 degrees, and I know a piece of it, then I know I just need to do 180 minus 38, and that is 142. So if that's 38 degrees, that has to be 142. Because that is the only way that a line would make 180 degrees. And because that is 142, all of these other angles, 2, 4, 6, and 8, are also 142 degrees. All right, moving to the back. number 5 and number 6 are very similar problems. It says lines M and N are parallel. Which are the angle measures of angle A and angle B? So we're trying to find angle A, the measure of angle A, and the measure of angle B. A is pretty simple. If you look at the diagram, A is going to be congruent to this 55 degrees here. The reason why it's congruent is because that is connected to the vocabulary we learned. They're alternate interior angles. So angle A is 55 degrees, and how do we know that is because of alternate interior angles. Angle B takes a little bit more work. Angle B, most people make a mistake here, and they think they need to subtract 180 minus 55 to get this measurement. But really, this is your line, and this whole thing, it's half a circle, needs to be 180 degrees. So in order to figure that out, we need to know this piece. We find this piece just like we found A. 65 and this piece are congruent because they're alternate interior angles. So I've given an example of a pizza. If I have a pizza that has 180 slices, and I know we take away 65 slices and 55 slices, how many slices do we have left? And that will give you the answer for B. It's the same concept here. This whole thing is 180 degrees. Take away 55, take away 65, whatever's left is B. So one way to do that is say, what is 55 plus 65, and you get 120, and then you do 180 minus 120, and you get 60. And you can test it out. The way you can test it is to make sure 55 plus 60 plus 65 equals 180, because this makes a straight line. And that does add up to 180 when you do 55, 60 plus 65. The next question is question number 6, which is very similar, just a few different numbers. Again, we're looking for the measures of angle A and the measure of angle B. The measure of angle A is the simplest one to find. Again, the reason why it's easy to find is because it's an alternate interior angle, and alternate interior angles are congruent to one another. So it's also going to be 60 degrees here. And again, just like the last problem we worked, you have to find the measure of this piece before you can find B. The measure of this piece is going to be 70 degrees. Why is it 70 degrees? Because they're also alternate interior angles. And when I say alternate, I'm looking at the alternate side of this line. Alternate sides of the line and inside the parallel lines here. That's why it's alternate interior angles. So if that is 70 and that is 60, I'm going to say, okay, 60 plus 70 gives me 130 degrees. Well, that's not my answer for B. I actually need to take 180 and subtract 130 from it, and I get 50. So B should be 50, but before I write it down, let's test it out. 60 plus 50 plus 70. That makes a straight line right here. Everybody see that? Makes a straight line. 1, 2, 3 angles that make a straight line. So 60 plus 50 plus 70 should be 180. Well, what is 60 plus 50? 60 plus 50 is 110. 110 plus the last angle of 70 does give us 180. So angle B is 50 degrees. Moving on to the last question, number 7. Lines M and N are parallel. Which angle is equal to 110 degrees? Choose all that apply, meaning we're going to have to choose more than one. So 110 degrees is here. I'm just going to go through and see what it matches with. 110 and 2 are vertical angles, so 2 is congruent. 110 and 4 are corresponding angles, so 4 is congruent. And then 110, this angle over here, even though there's no number there, those are alternate exterior angles because they're on the exterior side, the outside of the parallel lines. So we're going to look at our choices. 1 is not congruent. 2 is congruent. 3 is not congruent. 4 is congruent. And 5 is not congruent. This angle that is not labeled is congruent, but it's not labeled, so we'll just leave it at that.